ye tarnish the vil renown faith. I'm Slambly Blamblies of the Tambly Blamblies. Ye rotten sort. I'm gonna punch you in the gut, I will. I'll knock your teeth in. I'm gonna kiss you gently on the forehead.
And welcome back to Devlog. In the last part I worked on making a level, and in this part I work on a new acrobatics feature. This feature being the rope line, which I could not think of a non-confusing name for this acrobatic feature. So now I have in coding ropes and rope lines. It gets very convoluted when coding things. I get muddled very quickly. But all these do are they are ropes hanging horizontally in opposed to vertically down, like other ropes. And if the player grabs onto these, they will slide along the rope, kind of like a zip line with your hands. The main reason to design these is because I am now separating the first level chapters into specific levels based on each acrobatic feature, and I was making the level 4 ropes when I ran into somewhat of an issue where I could not think of enough dynamic and interesting ways to add ropes to a stage, since they're just the ones you can swing left and right on. So I made a new rope system, the rope line system. This still works thematically as ropes. They're very similar to ropes, but they're just horizontal instead of vertical, and you slide through them. This meant I could add more complexity to the initial rope level while not making it confusing for a player, adding too many different things, because fundamentally they're very visually similar and you can read very easily what the ropes are going to do when horizontal. The way ropes themselves are programmed, the horizontal ropes, is that they have a bunch of pivot points. These are transforms set to the rope, which have a upwards direction and are positioned on the rope. So from left to right, they would have position points from the left side of the rope to the right side of the rope and any dips in between. These are what the player is going to navigate between. So while going on this rope, they will go from point 1 to point 2 to point 3 to point 4 to point 5 to point 6 if the rope is left to right, or in reverse if the rope is right to left. This is a manual thing I set up. Basically, there's no real logic for if the player should go right or left on a rope based on the sloping of the rope. It's exclusively just a manual thing I set up for levels. If this was more of a dynamic physics-based rope, I would probably have the player build momentum and lose momentum based on the height difference between the points they're currently on versus the point they're going to go onto, and then turn around if the difference is too much or they have lost speed. But this is just something I can put into levels to make it dynamic and fun for the player to go onto these rope systems. I don't need to have a realistic movement to it, because the player isn't going to land on a rope in a position where they aren't needing to go either left or right. Since the game is a platformer, there's no real exploration where the player would go onto one of these ropes in a situation where they don't need to go in the direction of the rope. For the visual of the rope, I just use a sprite shape system because it's the easiest system to use. I have either a rope sprite which is looping or a chain sprite which is looping. There is no actual gameplay difference between the chains and the ropes. It's just for visual niceness, a variety of rope types. Then I have a sprite for the beginning or end of the rope. These are all hanging in midair because when I come around to making the actual visuals of levels, these will be positioned in background elements, hanging them so it doesn't look like they're just floating. Finally, I had the collider for these. This is just an edge collider which I make the shape of the rope. The way the rope works interacting with the player, and why I have titled this devlog about grind rails, probably, is because it works exactly the same as all of the grind rail systems I have made in previous devlogs. If you have not seen those previous devlogs, I shall explain it very quickly. Once the player is on a rope or a grind rail, they will find the appropriate point to be set onto the rope. They will then move either left or right based on their velocity to the next point in the system, so from 3 to 4. The way they move to this point is by ticking a timer, and then this timer is also modified by the distance between the 2 points. So we're going to tick the timer based on the player's current speed, and then also the distance between the 2 points. So if point 1 to 2 is very close, but point 2 to 3 is incredibly far, we're still going to have the same speed maintained, going from one point to another, despite the fact that we're just ticking a timer from 0 to 1 for this movement. The easiest way to think of this system is just by a very complicated lerp system throughout the entire rope system, where it has a bunch of transform points, and we're just lerping from point 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 throughout every single point on this rope based on our current position. And then all I have to do is move the player from point 1 to point 2 of the rope, this being the point they're going to go from to the point they're going to go to, based on the timer. Very easy, since it's just a lerp function. And then also have the player's upwards direction lerp between the upwards direction of point 1 to the upwards direction of point 2. This is because there is bends in the ropes, there is different up and down directions, so if I had the player actually rotating to these bends, it makes the player look like they are actually on the rope a lot more convincingly. If the player is on the wrong direction of the rope, as in the rope is going to go to the right, but the player is moving to the left, I had the player slow down and then lerp their speed to the correct direction and then turn around on the rope. That's very simple, they just go to negative speed and then turn around. The most complex part of this system is finding out which point of the rope they should be set on when they actually grab onto the rope. Grabbing onto the rope is done manually when you fall onto it, but you have to have a coding setup for finding which point to set the player onto, and then finding the point between the 2 points that the player should be set onto where they should be. For example, if there is a very long rope with 2 points and you land in the middle of it, the player needs to be told that the timer between these 2 points should be 0.5 because they're in the middle of 2 points, and then also which 2 points they should be naturally set between. All we do for this is we track every single point in the rope system. We check the closest point to the player, we check the second closest point to the player, then we check the player's position between these 2 points. So if the player is halfway between these 2 points, we're going to read back 0.5. If they are 1/4 away from the first point and 3/4 away from the second point, relative to the distance between the 2 points, it's going to be set to 0.25. It's basically just finding a division between these 2 points as to where the player is relative to these 2 points. This number is then used for the timer of the rope, and then this is what is manipulated to move our points on the rope as the player moves on the rope. Did that make any sense? Has the word point lost all meaning? Basically, we just move the player around pivot points based on the distance the player is from these pivot points when starting on the rope, and then we move either positive or negative in the system based on. And the only thing that is left is the player not being on these ropes. This is very simple as well. The player can even jump upwards, which adds them going upwards and leaving the rope. The player can press down on the controller, which will have the player let go of the rope, or if the player reaches the end of the rope length, this being the last pivot point, the player will just fly off the rope. All very obvious. The first two are just inputs that make the player stop being on the rope. The second one is just detecting if the current point they are on is either less than or more than, well, less than 0, as in it's before the first point of the rope, or more than the current amount of pivot points on the rope. If it is, it means we have exceeded the pivot points on this rope and we can just be set into the air. And that is it for Devlog. This is an incredibly simple system. Since I have made this pretty much exact same system for grind rails in 3D multiple times, I am once again oh so relieved at how infinitely simple it is to make the exact same system in 2D. Oh my gosh, it is the best. Boy howdy do I love two-dimensional game design. I don't have to judge which position is closest to the player based on angular direction towards the player, or find which direction a player needs to move on the grind rail based on their forward direction and do a bunch of quaternions. All I have to do is say, is point left or point right of the player? Designing in 2D is pure bliss. Realistically, I'm very happy with this system. I think it adds a lot more nuance and complexity to the level with the ropes, the rope level. It adds more variety to just having a level that is made up of ropes. It's more interesting, it's more fun. They're actually pretty fun to perform on. I'm a big fan of this system. One glitch I had when programming this system was because I forgot to include an else in an if-else statement, which is a if this, else, else, otherwise statement. So in odd occasions of this rope, there was a glitch where it was ignoring one of these systems and it was revealing that the rope would have a length of infinity, and it was made with one specific typo, but it was a very annoying glitch to have to deal with. I couldn't figure out what the issue was until I remembered that I, expert game designer, forgot to type a 4-letter word. The next devlog is about levels again.